For this Iyengar practice, you'll need a belt, a bolster, a blanket, a chair, and maybe a couple blocks if you'd like. So right now, get your blanket, your belt, and your bolster, and we're going to set up for a reclining bound angle posture. You're going to take your bolster down on your mat lengthwise, take your blanket and fold it up, put it over the top of the bolster where your head's going to go. And then you can come to seated in front of your bolster, right in front of the end of the bolster. Grab your belt. You're going to open the belt up and make it a loop that you can put around your body. So it's going to come around your waist. Mine is a clicker belt, so I'm going to unbuckle it and open it, and then take it around the back of my waist, click it back together, and then make sure that the tail of the belt is handy so you can shorten it. Take the belt down around your waist and then hook it over the bottoms of your feet. The belt comes inside your thighs to around the pinky toe side of your foot. Soles of your feet are together, and then your knees open up. Situate the belt down on your low back. Pull the bolster up and lie back over the bolster. You may have to kind of fold the blanket up a little bit more and bulk it up a little bit to give yourself some more support if you feel like this is too far back for your head. Hopefully the tail of the belt is handy so you can adjust it if you need to shorten the belt. You could use your fists under your hips here, or those two blocks here under your thighs if you feel like the knees need some support. You could open your arms, breathe right into the bolster, smooth your breath in and out of your nose, and take as long as you need to situate. If you need to move around, if you need to adjust the props, you're never just frozen or stuck here. You can always move around. So I'm going to take the blanket and set it up so it's a little higher. I felt like my head was falling back too far. And then when you're ready, use your hands to encourage relaxation. Use your breath to encourage relaxation. So by your hands, I mean relax your fingers, relax your palms, your wrists. This is just a nice place to check in. So another way you could use your hands is one hand on your belly and one hand on your heart, and feel the breath moving like a wave. Breath is rolling your body up and down, breathing in and out of your nose. And feel your breath expand into the bolster. Feel your breath always happening first under your hand on your belly. So each inhale and exhale begins with the belly. And then that wave-like movement. And hopefully this opening that the bolster is creating is providing you more space to breathe up into the very tips of your lungs. And then you can take any arm variation for the next few moments here if you want to stretch your arms out back to the floor and relax them. Or even if you wanted to stretch your arms above head, you're welcome to stretch overhead, grab your elbows, frame your elbows with your hands. Or just find stillness, a place to just be in your body for a few moments, noticing the space that you're creating in your hips and your back. And you can feel that space as you breathe. It's expanding up through your ribs and your lungs, through your chest. All right, and then we're going to come out of this in the next few moments, so you can unbuckle your belt and take your knees back up. And then you take the belt out of the way, or just let it kind of hang there. Take your arms overhead, press your palms into the wall if you're close to the wall. Knees together towards the ceiling. Nice little hollow body, almost like a handstand, but you don't have to do the handstand. It feels good. I'm going to take the blanket out of the way so I can get a little bit more opening in my chest. Hips are still on the floor. The back is bending over the bolster, and palms are pressing into the wall, getting those triceps engaged. And just for a few moments here, and then release your hands and pull yourself up to seated. You can take a minute here just to sit if you need. gentle little twist if you need. I'm going to situate for the next posture. So you're going to take your bolster and your blanket, and you're going to fold the blanket up. I like to do this accordion style so that I can have some edges to bunch up and just kind of specialize that for my neck, just kind of make it just right for my neck. I'm going to come into Virasana Hero pose. So in this, I'm not sitting on the floor and I'm not sitting on the bolster. So it's kind of like my butt's not even on the floor, but the back of my glutes are right on that bolster. And if you feel like your calves are in the way, you can come over and push your calves back. Don't turn them out, push them back towards your heels. And then again, get the top third of your glutes on the bolster, right on the end, and then lie back. So here's where I'm going to take that blanket and just kind of move it specially just for my neck. Wad it up. There you go. And then arms relax out to the sides. So a couple different ways you can approach this. If you need to have something under your glutes, a block can go under there so you can push your hips up a little bit more, especially if you feel like that's pulling on your back too much. You could also use a smaller bolster. This is a fairly chunky bolster. And then also you could simply push down into your shins and lift your hips up off the floor, off the bolster. Again, here, if you wanted to take your arms overhead and press them into the wall if they're close enough, or here you could frame your elbows. Press your upper arms into the blanket so that your arms aren't just hanging and pulling or dropping. There's some active push there. And stretch out. Good. Switch sides if you've got the elbow framing across the opposite form over. Just a few breaths here. Again, you can push those hips up, activating the front of those shins, pushing down. You feel more space along the front of your hips if you can press the hips up a little bit. All right, and then release your arms. And if you want to stay here a little longer, you're welcome to stay here for a few more breaths. And if you're ready to come out, you come out when you're ready. Make sure this doesn't hurt your knees or your low back. And so again, if you need a smaller bolster, or if you need to replace the bolster maybe with a blanket instead, or if you have an extra blanket, you can stuff it under your glutes here to get those hips to lift a little easier without so much work. You just want to feel nice and open in your front hip pockets and your chest. And so if you feel like there's any pulling down of your hips, get those guys to lift. And you want your chest open here. So I'm kind of squeezing the bolster with my triceps. So you can bend your elbows on the floor and squeeze the bolster with your arms. And that encourages the upper back as well to kind of hug the bolster. So this is a very supported back bend. And that can be very challenging. So please take it easy and modify as you need. When it's time to come up, press down into your feet, push the floor away, and lift up to seated. Right, then you can come over to hands and knees and scooch those props off your mat. We'll sit up for the next posture. So I'm going to take this bolster, I'm going to scooch it down to the wall, and I'm going to turn it up onto its highest edge, or to its tall, second tallest height, onto its skinny side. I really just want this for my heels, so you could have blocks here if your bolster isn't the type of bolster that can sit up like this. And then a chair facing away from the wall, so the chair back is to the wall, and put a blanket on the chair seat. You're going to have a belt here as well. We're going to come into Viparit Dandasana, which is an inverted staff pose. So you have to sit through your chair, and so this can be challenging if you don't have a folding chair that has enough space between the chair back and the seat. And you could use a stability ball if you had something to hold on to here. I'm not quite sure how you could finagle that, but be careful with whatever you're doing here. You're going to scooch through the chair, then put your heels on the bolster or heels on the blocks to the wall, and then your belt is going to come around your thighs, around your femurs. And then you're just going to tighten it down. So it's squeezing your legs together, but not to the point that it hurts your knees, the insides of your knees. And it's also good enough width that you can press into the belt, like resist it. I'm going to slide down here. My blanket went with me too far, so I've got to come back up and resituate this blanket. So be careful with this. If you don't have a padded chair seat, this isn't going to feel real great. So I've got to get that blanket to come over the lip of the front of the seat so it doesn't dig into my back. Your hands, it's going to depend where your hands need to go here. It may take you a few times to set this up. Sometimes you just You guess just right at the beginning how far you need to be from the wall, and then sometimes it doesn't work out so well. My hands are down on the edges of the sides of the chair back. I eventually take them up higher. I felt like that was better. Also, my heels are not quite on the wall, so I'm going to scooch myself a little closer here and try to get my heels to actually press into the wall. And if you feel like your head hanging is just too intense, you might need to put a block under your head or any kind of surface you've got to elevate the floor up and have something to press into. You can always draw your jaw back in a little bit, but don't take your chin to your chest. This is supposed to be a throat opener. So again, my hands are on the side of my chair seat. It might be easier, or the chair back, it might be easier to have those hands come up a little higher and take an overhand grip so you're not falling back so far. Just adjust this as it feels good to you. This is basically an inversion, so don't stay here any longer than you need to be here. When you're ready to come up, pull yourself up to seated. And you can take your feet down to the floor. Before we move into another posture, I'm going to take the belt off and move into an easy seated twist here. So I'm going to use the chair back to twist. Feet are on the floor. If your feet don't quite hit the floor, you can put a block under them. Using my left elbow on the chair back, right hand to the chair seat. A couple different hand options here. Take hand to hip, right hand. Or you could open the right hand behind you. I'm going to take the hand to the back of my head and turn my head towards the front of the room, towards the chair seat back. All right, and then untwist. And second side. Right forearm braces across the chair back. Left hand can come to your hip. They can open up behind you. Or you can then take your hand behind your head and take your right ear towards your right shoulder and pull on the left lats. Okay, and then come out of that as you're ready. A little forward fold here if it feels good. Take your time here. There's no rush to move on to the next posture. Coming out of the chair slowly and cautiously. All right, and then we'll set up for the next posture. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use the belt again. I'm going to use my rope wall. And if you don't have a rope wall at home, obviously that would be weird probably if you did. Although I know a few people who do have rope walls at home. I've given them advice on how to build them, so it's not that weird. However, I know it's not common. So use a chair. I'm going to take rope Shirshasana, which is rope headstand. And just so you can see even here from, if you've never been to a rope wall class, this is how we take headstand, and it feels super helpful. It's so helpful, and it feels really good. So I'm getting my rope station set up with a blanket over the belt, because the belt does tend to dig into your back. Now, if you don't have a rope wall at home, of course, that's to be expected, use a chair, and we'll come into Shirshasana using a chair. So this is not going to be a hang upside down and chill, close your eyes and go to sleep pose. In either variation, you're going to be doing work. So don't feel like you're missing out if you're not hanging from the wall, although you kind of are. But anyway, just kidding. All right, so headstand on the ground, and you're using a chair under your feet. All right. Your head doesn't even need to be on the floor on that. If you're not comfortable with that, you could have your head floating over your thumbs. All right, so I'm going to show you on the rope wall, rope Shirshasana. You step in behind the ropes, and you want this to come right at your sacrum. So as soon as I started to get into this, I noticed my buckle was in the wrong position, so I'm going to have to adjust myself here. Typically we use different belts that don't have those buckles on them. And then if you ever come to a rope wall class, you'll see the most work is in the setup, not the actual postures. And if you have a rope wall at home and you don't need a blanket on the belt, don't use the blanket. It's fine. Some people think that that's really good for smashing out some fascia. I don't think it feels great. All right, so I'm going to take this down to my sacrum, right at the waistband. Feet are not going to come any higher than my hips until I'm ready to go upside down. And then my feet come together in a bound angle. The knees are outside of the ropes. As you can see, the belt is what's holding me up. Now I want my head to be flat on the floor here. If I'm too high, I'm just going to dangle. If I'm too low, I'm gonna scrunch in and drop, and you don't want that. So you want to be pushing into the wall with your feet, with your glutes, and into the ropes, into the belt, whatever is holding you in, with your thighs. So there's resistance. That here, no. So I'm just, you can see that drop in pressure, that drop of the engagement, and it just drops, everything drops. And then I'm going to set my hands up for Shirshasana. This is a great way to train your body for Shirshasana mentally and physically. You can press down into your elbows, press down into your wrists, engage your neck muscles. Again, your core is very active here. So you should be feeling work in this setup. And if you're in the chair setup, your thighs are engaged, your elbows are pressing down, your shoulders are pressing your elbows into the floor, and the chair is there for balance. And if your head's not on the floor, engage the neck muscles anyway and act like the neck muscles are working to hold some of your body weight up. Get them trained for this. You can stay here for about a minute or 2 minutes. I don't like to stay here too long. It just kind of, you don't want any pressure to build up in your head, especially if you've got the ropes. It can tend to dig after a while. If you're in the chair supported version, you may be coming down and taking a child's pose after a few moments, and then maybe try it again for another few breaths. When you're ready to come up out of the rope Shirshasana, feet come to the wall and you press your legs out straight. And then immediately come into a child's pose, because coming up out of that is going to be a little dizzying. Balasana, child's pose. If you were in the chair supported version, take the chair out of the way and come down into child's pose. And take as long as you need in child's pose to recover from the inversion. And then when you're ready, come up and get ready for the next posture. All right, so in between postures, if you want to take a quick cat-cow or chaturanga, please feel free to do so. Pause the video and work in any additional movements that make sense to your body. And we're going to grab a couple blocks here now, and at least one anyways. I'm going to set that block up on the wall. My heels are going to come to that block, and then I'm going to grab the bolster. We're going to work Setu Bandhasan, which is bridge pose. And this is slightly different than supported bridge pose. This can be a really tricky pose in the middle of the room without props. So I really like doing this with props. Your head is on the floor and your feet are on the floor, and that's it. And you're in a bridge shape and a back bend. So you'll see here in just a moment. We're going to do the smart approach. So a large bolster and a blanket folded up on top of that bolster. Now this all depends on the size of your bolster. You may not need that blanket. It just depends on how thick your bolster is. Mine's pretty thick, but I'm going to use it, and I like the blanket on there anyways. Then a belt is going to come in handy. All right, so you're going to take that belt and click it around your thigh bones and tighten it down a little bit so you've got something holding your legs together, but also the belt is wide enough to push apart. Feet are going to come up on the brick, on the block, on the wall. A second block here underneath the backs of your shins, calves, knees, kind of whatever area helps you to keep from hyperextending. And then you're going to scooch down on the bolster enough so that you can have your heels flat on the floor, on the wall, and you can start to take your shoulders off the top edge of the bolster and start to take the top of your head to the floor. And so this is Setu Bandha, or this is actually Setu Bandhasan. Okay, so I'm going to scooch a little closer. My feet were not quite hitting the wall. The thing that always happens with me is as soon as I get on that bolster and I slide back, my heels come off the wall. I really want my heels on the wall to push into, because eventually your feet are going to be flat on the floor here. And I'm going to just kind of hug my shoulders here. So this is the hand variation in the classical expression. Your hands come up and grab opposite shoulders. And so this is just a nice place to start that awareness of your body. You could also have your hands on the sides, down to the floor, along your sides, on your hips, on 2 extra bolsters or 2 extra blocks if you've got them handy. You can even take your arms out above head. I mean, this is just really a great back bend. Express it however you want. It does not have to be classical. I do like the hands on the shoulders, so I'm going to go back to that. Top of my head is pressing down into the mat, so my back muscles, or my back neck muscles, are engaged. You're not just pushing the weight into your head. I'm also going to lower the blocks down to the second, down 1 height, and then I'm actually going to get them out of the way. So you can take them down to their lowest height or take them completely out of the way. This is going to create more of that angle. Eventually you would come completely off the wall and your feet would be on the floor. To move 1 step closer to that, you could start to take your feet apart, because once your feet do come to the floor, the toes are pointing out away from each other. And then you're kind of on the outer edges of your feet. Setu Bandhasan, bridge pose. Very tricky without the bolsters. Love it with the bolster. Just let it feel good. And then only be there for as long as you feel it's comfortable for you to start to understand the nature of that position. Pull yourself up to seated. We're going to set up for easy noose pose. I'm going to keep the belt around the thigh bones just for alignment's sake. Hook left elbow on the right thigh. Right hand's going to come down to the end of the bolster and kind of pull back, but not with your upper shoulder. Twist towards your right and then untwist. Inhale. You can sit for a moment there and then move on to the second side. Right elbow is going to hook your left thigh, left hand comes down and just gently leverages the end of the bolster, coming into easy noose pose. And then you can come out of that with your next inhale, releasing the twist, and just sit for a moment as long as you need. I'm going to scooch the bolster back, take my feet out to the wall. This is my preferred recovery from that. A block definitely behind your knees so that your knees do not hyperextend. You don't want that. That's no good. Okay. Feet against the wall. Push into the strap with your thighs. Press back with your sit bones. And then press into the wall with your big toes mound. Paschimottanasana, straight leg seated forward fold. There's an active press out into the belt, so don't make it too little or too big. Gotta find that sweet spot. Crown of your head extends towards the wall, and again, you're pushing into the big toes, pulling back with the pinky toes, but then press your toe pads all into the wall and spread out your toes. And then drill right into that wall with those heels. This should feel like a very active seated forward fold. And it could be intense, so be careful, because the more active it is, the better it, the setup is and the alignment, and it's more intelligent, and then you can feel more. All right, inhale to come up out of that and take your belt off your legs. All right, we'll set up for the next pose. All right, so I'm going to grab the belt again and the chair. We're going to come into Shavasana. So if you have ropes at home, you can take the belt and string it from the top set of ropes for a head hang. Otherwise, if you don't have this set up at home, you can use a chair. This chair is very awkward to do this with because it's got those two rungs on the front and the back legs. And also it can slide off. So if you have an extra yoga mat that you can put on your chair seat so that belt doesn't slide off, see how it's sliding off the edge. You also have to find just the right height for this. Sometimes it's just too high, it's too low. It took me a few moments to get into this. And you got to move it away so you got enough room to get down on the floor. Make sure your feet aren't hitting the wall. If you want your feet on the wall, that's fine, but this is relaxation. This is Shavasana. It should be pretty chill. Yeah, wiggle under this chair. The belt should go under the occipital, the occiput, so it should not be on your neck. It should be right where if you were to wear a hair headband. Like a hair tie thingamajig or like a sweatband or something. And then again, you've got to find that perfect height, especially since I had my hair in a little bun at the nape of my neck there. I could feel my hair hitting the floor, so it was too high, and then it was too low, and then it was too high. Play with it. It takes some time. And then once you find the sweet spot, you just let your head feel that weightlessness. Your neck muscles and your upper back muscles do so much work to hold your heavy head up. This is a fantastic way to just get those neck muscles to relax and feel that floatiness, quietness, and peace in your head. And let your breath just move in and out of your body. All right, you can stay here as long as you'd like. If this feels really awkward or uncomfortable, please feel free to come down to the floor, get that chair out of the way, and enjoy a nice floor-based Shavasana. And as always, at the end of your practice, bow to you, yogis. Tell yourself, thank you and good job.